Hello, and thanks for coming to our session on integrating gender equality in community mapping projects. This lightning talk is going to be in two halves. The first part by myself talking about some of our work in Peru. My name's Rebecca Firth, and I'm the Director of Community and Partnerships at Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team. And the second part will be run by my colleague Sara Amadi, talking about some of HOT's work in East Africa in her role as a program manager for our team in East Africa. So what I'm going to talk about is gender inclusion in what some of HOT's community grants programs, and specifically focusing on some of the projects that I've been running in Peru. Part of HOT's mission is to support anyone, anywhere to add to the map. So helping global mapping communities in low and middle income countries to develop their own mapping communities and add to OpenStreetMap. And there's a few things we sort of know about this OpenStreetMap and HOT ecosystem globally. The first thing is that there's no great estimate of gender inclusion in OpenStreetMap overall. So these vary quite substantially, these estimates, but the majority of conclusions are around this 2 to 5% female participation mark. In terms of gender equality in Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, we have a slightly better idea of what level that's at from one of our most popular tools, which is called the Tasking Manager, where we know that we have 41% female users, 55% male users, 4% unknown, and 1% of users self-defined in terms of gender. So that gives us a slightly closer understanding of inclusion, but still a lot lacking in that data. And then thirdly, when we receive applications for community microgrants, which are these small funds that we give to OpenStreetMap communities across the world, most of those applications include a desire to engage more female mappers. It's a known challenge locally that there are not very many female mappers in the communities that are applying. And we're only able to support about 1 out of 10 of those applications presently. And so it's something we sort of know that there's a huge appetite for, but have a long way to go in terms of supporting. In terms of the work that we've been doing in Peru, and specifically how inclusion has worked there, we've been working to train secondary students and university students to map gender norms affecting their communities. And doing this sort of as part of school curriculum, embedded in a technology training program, and answering key questions about how gender affects the society that those students are living in. So answering questions like, how does gender affect my educational and economic opportunities? This is all structured in terms of investigations, so getting students to learn tech skills, but also apply them in their own community. So defining hypotheses around the role of gender in paid versus unpaid work, or the role of gender in use of public spaces, and then actually mapping out those problems. So a really good example for public spaces would be like, what resources are in public spaces, what sports can be played there, are they sports that are inclusive of both males and females, and if not, is that something that's having an effect on use of public space? We've really been focusing a lot on trying to build empathy and understanding between different students, and helping to sort of challenge social and cultural norms. I think so much around gender and how gender works in terms of just like people's experience in society is that they're kind of taking it for granted. It's like an automatic decision. So really helping to actually say like, okay, what is this problem that we're seeing, to challenge it, to understand why it's there, and to see if there's any alternative is really important. And these are just a few quotes from students who have participated in the program. And this is an example of one of the maps produced by the project. This is a group of students who were struggling with the fact that a lot of the advertising that they saw on the way to school was extremely sexist, and they felt very inappropriate, and that was really affecting what people in their class thought about women and how they treated women. So this project used a very simple tool called MapHub. It was done by a few school students, like 4 students on their way to school. Tag and map on the map everything that you see that you feel is sexist, and produces, I think, a really useful overview of just kind of how many touch points might someone have with sexist advertising in something as simple as their journey to school. So far, the program has trained over 700 people on OpenStreetMap, Maps.me, Kobo, and Mapillary, and really focused also on engaging male students. So we have 48% female, 52% male participation. That kind of gender equality in this is really important for me. There's a lot of schools of thought around whether gender programs should prioritize female students only, or if they should prioritize both. Personally, specifically within education, I think it's so important to prioritize both, because otherwise you can end up with a lot of animosity from male students towards female students who are perceived as getting opportunities that maybe they aren't. And the point of the program is kind of building awareness and empathy. And so it's very important that the entire population know about that, and not just women. So I think that equality in the programming has been a really important thing, and something I would really encourage in all community mapping projects which are engaging with gender. We've added over 5 million edits to the map supporting gendered issues, and really focused on increasing confidence in using technology to drive social change and advocate for gender equity. Since this program concluded, we've pivoted pretty quickly to support the COVID-19 response. So while this isn't explicitly related to gender, I think it's a really good example of how a gendered project that was intentionally inclusive from the very beginning has then been able to pivot and scale to support something at much wider scale. And so this is a GIF of all of the remote mapping that was completed in the province of Cusco, which is home to 1.2 million people between March and June 2020. And those maps were then used to actually deliver oxygen to people in their homes when hospitals overflowed during the first wave of COVID in Peru. So how can you get involved in this? There's a few options up on the screen right here. Map, we have a lot of projects on the tasking manager that are related to gender, and lots of filters and searches you can apply to find them. There's conversation happening on Slack, and you can particularly join our community working group to find a lot of other people in the humanitarian mapping community who are interested in gender. And also join the virtual HOT Summit, which is happening on the 4th of December this year, which always features gender mapping projects and tries to feature female-led community mapping projects as well. And if you have any questions for me, this is my contact details. I'm really happy to be participating in this conference over this couple of days, and hoping to talk to people about this more. And with that, I'll pass over to my colleague Sarah, who's talking about HOT's work in East Africa. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. And hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Sara Amadi, and I'm a program manager with the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team. Today, I'm going to talk a bit about how our teams in the Democratic Republic of Congo and Uganda developed a context-specific gender strategy for a project in the Great Lakes region to increase and retain female mappers in our mapping activities. So, a bit of background. In late 2018, HOT began a project to scale the missing maps in Africa's Great Lakes region. The project focuses on the integration of machine learning generated building footprints across North Kivu and Ituri provinces in the DRC, as well as across Western Uganda, into OpenStreetMap. And another sort of focus of the project is to increase the map coverage through field mapping activities in these remote areas to support humanitarian and health response in these local communities. For those who are not familiar with HOT's mission, we work very closely with local communities to map place names, health facilities, and other relevant infrastructure in order to close the data gaps in these places that have historically remained unmapped. For this project in particular, because it spans multiple countries, conflicts, and languages, it was vital that HOT's community engagement strategy was inclusive and considered all of these dynamics. But taking it a step further, a question that we ask ourselves is, how do we ensure that there's equal participation of women in this mapping project, considering the role and presence that women have in the communities that we are mapping? And so we began our journey to explore how to create a context-specific gender strategy for this project that was considering both the geographic location and specific challenges that women face in this project, but also many of the other sort of challenges that kind of came along with women participating in activities outside of, their day-to-day. So the first sort of step in this journey was to first understand the challenges that women face in this particular geographic context. We held a handful of focus group discussions with local staff, volunteers, and communities who are familiar with this particular context and the challenges that women and girls face in community mapping projects. To do this, we developed a set of guiding questions for participants. Questions around accessibility in the community, how easy it was for women to get to health facilities or schools on their own, whether they needed permission, the difference in their ability to access these services in relation to male counterparts, and potentially even restrictions in their mobility. We discussed these challenges in great detail to first understand where the limits and restrictions may exist that prevent women from participating in any activities outside of, their day-to-day in their home. Based on these discussions, our teams determined a set of specific gender equality priorities that we would focus on, and a bit more about that shortly. Next, we had to create an implementation plan. Based on our priorities, we had to think about and determine action points, a timeline, and accountability. Who on our team would be responsible for ensuring that we'd be accomplishing our actions? Last, we had to develop a monitoring and evaluation plan. Without this, it would be very hard to monitor and even evaluate our progress over time in order to keep ourselves accountable. So what are some of the concrete examples of all of the steps that I have just outlined? So here are some examples of the 3 context-specific gender priorities for our project. During our focus group discussions with local teams and volunteers, we identified a handful of barriers that prevented women from seeking to participate in these projects. Some of the things that were discussed were women being uncomfortable to participate in training sessions with other men, or lacking the financial independence to be able to attend such trainings to begin with. These are the priorities that we set for this project to be able to enable women to feel comfortable in trainings while ensuring that they are designed exclusively for them, and to also ensure that transportation and access technology would not actually prevent them from being able to participate. Once we identified these priorities, it was time to create specific actions and tie them back to a timeline. When and how would we act on these priorities? This section right here, you'll see this image. It is a screenshot from the gender strategy that our team developed. You can see that our priority is to implement trainings that are designed to specifically retain and encourage women mappers. So what steps do we actually need to take, and when could we actually achieve this? From the discussions with our local teams and volunteers, we learned that we could seek recruitment advice and guidance from organizations, youth groups, women groups, from the communities themselves to help us in actually recruiting women and advertising this opportunity for women to get involved in our mapping projects, who otherwise would never learn about the work that we'd be doing in their communities. Finally, once you've actually identified your gender equality priorities and developed your implementation plan, you need to decide how you'll monitor your progress. For each priority, our team developed qualitative and quantitative indicators to be able to measure our progress over time. Here you see examples of indicators and measurements for the same priority that was seen in earlier examples, which is to design and implement specific trainings that would retain and encourage female mappers to participate in the project. So I wonder, I'm sure that you're curious about what this gender strategy looks like, what it contains. And so if you are curious and would like to learn more about it, you could visit our Open Mapping for SDGs toolkit at sdgs@hotosm.org, and you'll find the gender strategy in PDF format under SDG Goal 5, Gender Equality. Thank you.